Welcome back to another episode of the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast with Mr. Tucker Merrihew and myself, your hosts. Today we got a cool show coming your way. What we're doing with the show now, if you guys can't tell, every Tuesday we're releasing a live kind of case study interview style with an active client of ours that are crushing it. So you guys can hear from people that are at different points of their journey, whether they're doing a deal a month or 10 deals a month. You'll kind of get a mix of all those. Those will be 30-minute shows. Then Tucker and I back on the mic together on Thursday, going through issues we're seeing our clients face, kind of going through common questions that get answered to us and our very opinionated, subjective takes on what's happening out there in the real estate world. So, Tucker, how are things in your world here at the end of July?
They're good, man. They're good. Today was, we had a reason I was a couple minutes late to doing the show is actually got stuck in like what seemed like a monsoon out there. So the rains came a little early today and filled the roads, and there was some cars that couldn't get down certain roads because it flooded the roads. But the good thing about Southwest Florida is that if it rains like 5 inches in like an hour, it drains out in like 2 hours. So if that happened in Northwest, it would be like detrimental to like everything would flood and it would be flooded for a long, long time. So that's kind of the big difference here. You can get that kind of rain and it just kind of goes away as quick as it came.
Yeah, I remember my dad like prides himself on being a great driver. He was FBI undercover for a while and like had to chase down cartel guys and whatnot. And his little 350Z that he had that they confiscated that he got to drive as his police car. And so he thinks and I'd say he's a pretty good driver. And he came down to San Diego and visited during like one of the biggest, it was like 2 winters ago during like the biggest day of rain in like 40 years in San Diego. And I'm like, trust me, Californians do not know how to drive when there's any moisture on the road. He's like, no, I'm fine. And he called me like he was going to meet some buddies who lived down here. And he called me halfway and he was like, holy crap, I've almost gotten in like 8 accidents and I'm only halfway there. I was like, yeah, that is California drivers when it's raining.
I'll tell you what, Florida drivers it rains enough down here that they should know, but they're just maniacs anyway. So
Yeah.
it's just.
When I was driving there with Kate a few weeks ago, I was like, it was crazy how they merged and got on and off freeways and stuff. It was an adjustment.
As I've told you, speed limits, red lights, stop signs, and indicators are all, up for debate whether or not they're a suggestion. Yeah, they're just purely a suggestion here. So, as long as you keep that in mind,
we got some cool stuff going on at Easy Button. I'm actually flying up this evening after I leave the office to start filming a TV show with Mr. James Daner going through. Hopefully he wants to do the project. So it's flying up to pitch him the project and move things forward there. So we got a lot of cool client wins. You guys, there are people out there doing deals. And I think that's what I've realized is we talk about it a lot, but there are deals happening. A lot of people try to use market conditions as a reason why they're not winning in business. But I've found like the real operators, whether it's a good market, sideways market, down market, except for maybe 08. But even then, like real operators figured it out. Like they started doing short sales or, they just figured out a way to survive. And you're always going to go through, hopefully not that anytime soon, but very, very, very up and down in real estate. And it's not an excuse to not keep moving things forward. You might not make $4 million like you did 2 years ago if you were flipping in 2021 or, post a money printing machine going on in 2020. But it doesn't mean that there's not a deal out there we had and money to make. So some cool updates there. Today's show, you guys, we're going into kind of client questions that we're getting. And I do a live call for our community every Wednesday. If you're not in that, you can join below. It's down in the show notes, completely free. But we usually get 30, 40 people live every single week on there. And really good questions come up. And this week, a lot of the topics were around creative finance. That was probably 2 or 3, and I'm not a creative finance expert, so it'd be cool to throw this out there. Tucker and I can go into it, but the guy was asking, as he's a client of ours, and his comment, his name's Bo Evans, and his comment was, I'm actually getting too many leads. I don't know what to do with them. It's hard to keep up, and I feel like I'm a one-trick pony because I'm just making cash offers. What is I know I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear yours first on guys like that who are trying to add subject to all the hot trendy terms that you hear on Instagram from gurus right now, trying to quote unquote add those to their tool belt. What is your general opinion on people that are doing 5 deals a year, trying to become seller finance subject to experts and add that on top of the cash offers that they're making?
I will say it's a great tool to have in your tool belt, both, seller finance subject to, which I guess we could argue they're different, but they're the same in a way, right?
Yeah.
Um, the challenge and the thing that I figured out over the years is that you're going to have a lot more success in the seller finance world if you're in a lower price point market. The reason being is because most of these higher price point markets, when you're buying these houses, even if they're piece of shit tear down type houses, right? They're going to be for a fairly substantial price. And most of those people are going to have a substantial amount of equity, if not all equity, in those homes by the time that you buy them. And so it's very difficult to try and convince somebody who needs windfall cash that they're going to sell or finance you this deal at whatever percent for however many years with a balloon payment in 10. They may be dead in 10. They may be, who knows, right? Especially if you're buying from older people. So I will say that if you're in kind of a Midwest market or a mid-tier price point market or operating in a lower price point area of kind of a mid-tier market, you can make that seller finance angle work a lot better. Now,
Yep.
on the flip side, subject to, you can make that work in most markets across the country. Now, just because you can doesn't mean you should, in my opinion.
Yep.
We've done a number over the years, but here's the challenge, and here's the thing that, I guess, the good and the bad, right? You don't want to get suckered into taking over a deal just because you can, right? Because it's got cheap debt and there's like 5, maybe 10% equity or no equity, and you think that you can get it to break even, or even you think in your mind you can actually get it to cash flow rent wise. But reality is you're going to have CapEx, you're going to have vacancies, you're going to have other things that's going to eat up any potential cash flow that you think you're going to get, more than likely. So then that leaves you with, okay, you find a property that you want to renovate, let's say, or you want to flip, and they have an underlying loan against it. Let's say they, just for argument's sake, they owe 150,000, right? Let's say the house is worth 400 fixed up. So they want 200 grand for the house, right? And so you're like, oh, I could take over that 150, but then I got to go find this like tweener 50 grand that if you don't have 50 grand in cash of your own company capital to plunk down on there, then at the end of the day, you're probably better off just getting hard money and closing on it, because your down payment's going to be less, and you can actually then roll in some of your construction costs and, rehab costs and things like that. So I guess that's, as we kind of just pull back the curtain a little bit, those are kind of my initial thoughts on it. I'd be curious to hear what you think, though, after we're talking to our clients.
Yeah. My general, and I think the cool thing about this show is that one, I think you've been in the business longer and you've seen more cycles, but two, we kind of interact with different crowds. Like a lot of the people that get on these calls with me are, because you've been running the Deal Finders community for a long time. Actually, a lot of the guys that are OGs and they're now clients of ours too, and they kind of made the leap over, which is super cool. But yeah, I mean, I think we bring two cool. I think you are more experienced working with, like, I'd say more veterans, people that have been around for a while, or you've turned them into veterans. And I think those people are a lot more equipped to do these kind of deals. When I usually get these questions now, they're from guys doing like a transaction per month or a transaction every other month. And they're like, hey, I heard about this magical button you can press when you're having trouble getting a seller to negotiate with you. Like, hey, I'll take over your payments. And so I think it's an escape hatch for people way too early on in the process and too frequently, where they struggle with negotiating, they struggle with framing a cash offer and the basics of sales and real estate. And they're looking for an easy button. So I think it's the same reason people look for the next AI tool, the next marketing channels. They're trying to find the easy button. Cliche on our name, but they're trying to find the easy button when it comes to making offers, and it doesn't really exist. So I do think it's a good tool in the tool belt, but I think it's you go all the way through a sales process and you say, okay, this is the last thing that I can offer on this deal. Given all the negotiating we've done, understanding their whole situation, this could make it work. And then you pitch it in a way that's very clear to them, because I have buddies personally that have taken over a deal, not seller finance, it's a little easier, but subject to, and then gets called, dude. One of them specifically, Tanner, who I had on the podcast in Utah last year and lost 200 grand. And so it's not an easy button. It's not an escape hatch. It's absolutely a tool in your tool belt. But it's not going to change your life if you don't know how to do the basics. So that's generally my answer to them is, I'm not an expert in it. Go learn it. I think for most people, it's a distraction unless they are, who's actually and be coming on the show soon, Dave Janis, who is more, he's done realtor deals, he's done development deals, he's done fix and flip deals. Like, yeah, if he made a seller finance offer that made a lot of sense for the seller, I'd probably be like, great, kudos. Like that was probably the right move. But if someone's 5 deals in and they just don't want to do the boring work of learning the business, like, oh, I'm just throwing out seller finance offers to everyone, I think that's where people get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it really just boils down to you can't make a deal where there's not one, right? And as you're earlier on in the business, you think, like you said, there's this magic easy button that you can push, right? To like turn something that's not a deal into a deal by just flipping it to like seller financing or subject to. And that's not really the case. Like sub 2 stuff, like all of the sub 2 stuff I've done, the longest that I've held that note without it getting paid off has been like 7 months. And so for me, there's risk mitigation there too, right? Because it's like, if they call the note due, well, fuck off. It's going to get paid off before you can do anything anyway, right? So like at the end of the day, no big deal. But like the most ideal subject to deal that we've ever done is there was a guy, it was a meth house. I mean, I don't think he was doing meth in the house, but he was a tweaky Magoo. House was a disaster. It was in a fringy part of Southeast Portland. He needed $5,000 just to go somewhere and get on with his life because there was so much like cat shit and dog shit in the house. Like you couldn't even live in the house anymore, right? So the house was it wasn't an asset to him anymore. It was a complete liability. And he wanted $5,000. So we gave him $5,000. I said, we'll take over, the mortgage and we'll have it paid off in 6 months. And I then wholesaled it to a buddy of mine for $40,000. We netted 35 out of it. He renovated it, sold it 5 months later, right? And so that was like an ideal. Now we could have renovated it ourselves, but I didn't want to do that to my crew and have them have to clean out all that cat shit and dog shit. So, and we could take easy money off the top. So we did it. And that was like the absolute ideal type of subject to deal that you could do, whether you flip it, wholesale it, or you renovate it and sell it yourself. Outside of that, I don't see building a large portfolio of rental properties for yourself with other people's names on mortgages, the underlying mortgages. I just see that as a potential bad idea at scale, especially if you haven't been in this business very long, which the reality is that most of the people that follow that, subject to mantra are all fairly new to this business.
Yep, 100%.
And so they just take people for their word. And honestly, the guy that pitches it is fairly new to the business compared to me as well. So, it's the long road. Real estate
one of the many that's become their calling card.
And just because they've had success and they make money doesn't mean that they're the smartest guy in the room. That's the other thing that I've realized over the years. And real estate's not a sprint. It's a marathon. That's what it is. And so anybody that tries to do things otherwise, eventually there's just no shortcut in real estate. The only shortcut is moving up in the size of projects you do, and with that is additional risk and additional capital, but with that can come substantially larger profits as well.
Yeah, I think funny, piggybacking on that, in our industry, people don't listen to who's the most logical or who has the most thought out opinion, who has the most experience. They listen to the loudest person at that time. What I found, like the loudest, most overly confident, tattooed up, like Rolex on on stage, watch on, look at my cars, yelling at you online, like that is who people tend to listen to. And that is, I think that's a good resolution of this topic of, if that's the person you guys are changing your business based on their advice every single week or month, you're probably not playing the long game. You're probably playing their get rich game. And when they disappear in 2 years and are selling something else to a different industry, because they have such a bad reputation in ours, all of a sudden, you'll quickly realize, oh, I was changing my business every 2 months based on someone that their plan was only to ever extract all the cash they could from uneducated buyers in this business for 3 to 5 years and then move on. And we look at a lot of these guys' track record, that's how they move. Every year there's a new 30, 40, 50, 100,000 uneducated buyers that come into the market. They get sold 13 different things, and then those guys move on to the next group. So second question I think that'll be relevant for today is, I think I have 3 that'll kind of dominate the show. The next one is, I get this asked a lot, but it's the guys that are doing 5, 10, 15 deals, right? They're doing some wholesale, some flips, and they don't want to run a massive business. And we talk about that a lot. And I think it's been cool because a lot of our clients are like, yeah, I don't need or want to run a massive operation. I just want to make a couple $100,000 a year and do some deals. What is your take and advice to those kind of people? Because when the question comes up of how do they best build assets and net worth, whatever net worth means, right? It's a widely looked at and thought about term that I've found doesn't mean a whole lot for most people's day to day. But when it comes to assets and net worth, and they don't want to build a big operation, they just want to do 3, 5, 10 deals, 15 deals a year. What is your advice to them on playing that game in terms of stacking assets? How many properties would you recommend them to buy? Like, what is your general take on that for guys that don't want to do volume? They just want to do a couple hundred grand. They want to make a couple hundred grand a year, work on their own terms of their life. Obviously, it's still a pain in the ass, still hard work, still real estate, still business. But what is your take on that?
After 22 years of doing this, my advice has probably changed, but I think it's better now. You don't need a big business to make a lot of money, but you do need to do certain things to keep the money that you make, right? And so my suggestion to be like the most potent, smaller business that you can be in terms of building, stacking cash, keeping cash, building net worth, building assets is, number one, you got to have whatever your direct to seller marketing machine is, or your route to direct to seller leads, so that then you can negotiate and buy things for under market price, right? That's key number one for everything, whether you're buying to keep, buying to flip, whatever.
And to make it clear to people on that, sorry to cut you off, like, what is the, because people ask that, oh, I'm only getting a small improvement in price. Like, I found it to be pretty drastic. So like, what do you typically see is like, you have that machine versus you don't, like how much equity are you, upside are you adding per deal?
I mean, huge amounts, but
Yeah.
it's not going to be every lead, right? It gives you the opportunity to have an at bat at something that's not on the market, right? And like, baseball players if they're hitting 280, they're doing damn good, right? So, 2 leads out of 10 that have opportunity, 2 to 3, that's all you can ask for at the end of the day. And that's the reality of it. And then they whittle down from there. But, you can buy stuff depending on how much work it needs, for substantially less than market value. I mean, it varies, but a small amount, I don't think so. Some leads, yeah, of course, but other leads, huge amounts. You've got two components to your small business, right? One is you've got active income that you're going to create, right? And that's the first thing that you need to be able to pay rent and pay any of your support staff and pay for your marketing costs and things like that. But if you're going to net 200 grand out of your business at the end of the year after paying all of those things, and you're a younger guy, which most people in this business are, they probably are single filers with the IRS, they're going to pay a substantial amount of taxes. And if they live in my old state, they're going to pay a shitload of state tax too. And so you're going to write a big chunk of that away at the end of the year to the government, whether it be federal, state, both, whatever. And so that's the thing that I learned the most over time is, when we were cranking and we were making a ton of money, I wasn't stacking as many rentals because my outlook was just stack cash. And you always get burned at the end of the year, or you end up playing the game of hiding the money, and then you're just waiting for somebody to come knocking on your door potentially, and hopefully you hit it well if you do that, right? But the better way to do it is to use that same machine and buy one rental a year out of that machine, right? You don't have to flip everything. Buy one rental a year. Ideally, you can utilize the Burr method is not dead, right? You can buy something, renovate it, put it on. I mean, investor loans are so easy to get right now with good credit, and the rates are the same as your traditional 30-year fixed full doc rates. So it's like, why would you not do that? But let's just say you buy one rental a year and you update it, and then you put some long-term debt on it. You get most or all of your cash back out of it, ideally all of it, and then you've got $200,000 of depreciation that you can take in year one out of that thing, right? So you take that $200,000 of accelerated depreciation out of that asset. It's a rental that pays for itself. That 200,000 offsets all of your income. So you just kept 200 grand plus you established an asset that may even have an equity position and still after you fixed it up. You keep that for, a few years. You do that year after year. You take the same accelerated depreciation on each property each year. Then you sell all three of them. You buy a building. Boom. Now you have a whole new, set of depreciation that you can take because the underlying value of the structure of that building is substantially more than those three houses together that you already took out in the form of depreciation. So that's the game, right? The game is acquire an asset that will increase in value, use that asset to not pay taxes on the active income that you make. And if you do that for 5 years, you don't need a big business to create a really sizable net worth and a big portfolio of assets that you own and control that you can ultimately play Monopoly with.
That's very well put. Yeah, I think I think an interesting take on this because I say only, and it's longer than a lot of people, but I'm only just coming up on a decade in business for myself, and that's been in real estate primarily, or real estate adjacent. And I found, like, for me, I didn't for the first decade. One, I I'm 27 now, so I think my prefrontal cortex just fully got formed. So I think part of it is that, but I didn't really think about, compounding assets and net worth or care that much throughout the last 10 years. And I just really looked at how many lessons can I learn? How
Which is
quickly can I
normal, by
flip?
the way. At
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
totally normal.
Very normal.
Yeah.
And I think that's my answer is, and I put out content about this week, and it really resonated with a lot of people, which was the first 5 to 10 years in business are really about paying tuition and learning more so than about trying to get as rich as you possibly can. And you can still make a lot of money doing that. Like that's absolutely the case. But so I think that's a take that I have on that topic of there's nothing wrong with going through all the lessons and tribulations. And there's, of course, looking back, there's so many deals that I could have kept that would have started that snowball like you're talking about. But I think that's brilliantly put. And how I think about it now is, I put out a long piece of content about kind of my plan is, if I can buy 1 or 2 properties in an appreciation heavy market every single year with the cash flow I generate from my business and what I do, and then continue to grow the business, continue to do more of that and wait for 20 years. I think that's one of the better paths to building assets and net worth that there is, especially with how our tax code set up and how beneficial it is to real estate operators once you are a full-time real estate professional.
It's just not sexy to sell that, right? It's like,
No,
oh, the long
yeah,
game. That's boring as
yeah,
shit. Like, who
yeah,
wants to do that, right? But it's like, it's just a part of your real estate business, right? It doesn't have to be your entire real estate business. But if you have that off-market marketing machine, it's like I would really push people at the point that you're comfortable doing it to really start to utilize that because like I said, I bought a lot of rentals at the very beginning of my career, but I didn't really understand. And at that point, you couldn't take accelerated depreciation out of single family houses. So I just got straight line depreciation out of them. And I thought I was going to get rich just owning these rentals that some of them made me money. Some of them didn't make me much at all. But it did give me experience in property management and just managing assets and things like that. But you're right. I mean, you don't have to do it at the first 5 years, but at the point that you have a little bit of cash stacked and you're comfortable running your business, and you're sick of paying taxes. It really comes down to the point when you feel that when tax day comes and you got to write a check and you're like, oh my God, that's usually the moment where people will switch over and they'll be like, all right, there's a better way to do this.
yeah. And I think it's our tax code incentivizes that for a reason. Take advantage of it, and there's a lot of ways to take advantage of it. The people that are out there that exist. I'm not a pro in that by any means, but I know there's a lot out there. Well, that brings us to almost 25 minutes. So we'll save the third one for the next episode. But I think these are great. These are real-time questions you guys out there that we get from clients, people doing deals, trying to scale their business and build their dream business and what that looks like for them. So hope there's value there. As always, like, share, review. We don't grow from paid promotion. We had our biggest week ever last week of podcast downloads of the 2 shows that we did, which is awesome that you guys are listening and sharing. A lot of fun stuff we have coming soon. More client interviews who are in the trenches crushing it. It'll be beneficial to you guys. And of course, Tucker and I on the mic every single Thursday. So without further ado, we will get out of here. Until next time, you're only one deal away.